This video is for Chapter 11 of the DCAF V1 training syllabus. Chapter 11 of the DCAF V1 training syllabus satisfies Virtual Military Aviation Authority V1 Objective 1.3 and 1.6.3. This video will cover aiming ship on the ground, entering active runways, what to do during a quick reaction alert response that you are not involved with, aircraft lighting, aiming ship in the air, and lookouts. The aims of this lesson that by the end of this lesson the viewer will understand safe ground handling, understand what to do during a quick reaction alert, to understand safe practices within the circuit, and to understand safe practices in the air. Aiming ship typically means one of two things. Firstly, it can mean skill in flying an aircraft, how good you are and how safe you are in flying that aircraft. But more specifically, when we discuss aiming ship, we mean the safe and courteous operation of an aircraft. Therefore, aiming ship on the ground means to be able to operate all parts of your aircraft, including visual and audio communications, with due regard for others on the ground and due regard for safety. When taxiing, make sure to control your speed. If you can see ahead of you in good weather and the taxiway you are on is unlikely to be restricted by aircraft leaving shelters or aprons, you may taxi slightly faster than normal. In all other cases, taxiing should be kept to a brisk walking pace at maximum. When taxiing, always give right of way to aircraft leaving the runway, aircraft on your right, or aircraft passing you on a taxiway you intend to join. It's always important to monitor your position, to follow the instructions given by ATC, to be aware of what is around you, where you are going and who might be near you, and to be aware and to control your speed. By doing this, you can avoid a ground collision event. Overtaking on taxiways or runways is strictly prohibited. Strobe lights should not be used anywhere other than on the runway or in the air. You may turn on your strobe lights when entering the active runway, but you must turn your strobe lights off when leaving the active runway. Strobe lights may come under different names such as anti-collision lights, or high-intensity strobe lights, or HISL for short. Taxiway markings are generally in yellow, although some of the older ex-Soviet airbases will have white taxiway markings. Taxiway signs are typically in yellow with a black background, and holding points are typically in black with a yellow background, and runway numbers are typically white with a red background. Runway holding points are denoted by stop bars, however, on old Soviet airfields these are not always present, therefore common sense should be applied when holding short of a runway. Whilst at the hold point, and before entering an active runway, you should always have a very close and careful look through the downwind section of the circuit and into the approach. Remember that landing aircraft always have right of way. Your lineup may be completed behind a departing aircraft, however your takeoff may not be initiated until that aircraft has fully departed the runway. In other words, you cannot apply power until the aircraft in front of you has raised its wheels off of the ground. During a quick reaction alert response, the directed aircraft will taxi straight out to the runway and take off as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Your job is to merely give them right of way. Quick reaction alert is typically initiated via the radio, although in some cases it could be initiated by a white flare launched from the runway control vehicle. The white flare also acts to tell all taxiing aircraft to return to their start point. If you are on the taxiway, you should be aware of the taxi out routes taken by the quick reaction alert aircraft, as you have probably taxied on them yourself. Simply follow the instructions given by ATC, or taxi into the nearest available manoeuvring area, or onto a taxiway that does not directly lead to the runway. If you are on the runway, simply taxi down to the next taxiway and vacate safely. All aircraft have three types of lighting: navigation lights, approach and landing lights, and high-intensity strobe lights, sometimes called anti-collision lights. Approach and landing lights may be used for taxi in a low setting. Navigation lights should be turned on whenever in the circuit or on the ground. Navigation lights may only be turned off if a combat or tactical situation demands. Navigation lights are typically red on the left wing, green on the right wing, and white on the tail. It is important to understand thoroughly what to do whilst flying in the air if an unsafe situation begins to develop. Firstly, recognise the unsafe situation and choose to act. If you are required to make a radio call of any form, this is the lowest of your priorities. If you are converging head-on with another aircraft, both aircraft must turn to the right. If you are converging in the same direction but at an angle to another aircraft, where your flight paths are likely to overlap and result in a collision, the aircraft with the other aircraft on his or her right must turn to the left to avoid. A simple way of remembering this is red has right of way. If you see a red light, turn to your left. If you choose to overtake a slower aircraft when you are travelling in the same direction, do so to the right. Remember that when in approach, the lower aircraft always has right of way. In the case of an emergency, air traffic control will decide who has right of way during the emergency approach. Typically, the emergency aircraft will have right of way. If no air traffic controller is present, give way to aircraft suffering from emergencies. Lookouts are incredibly important for any part of flying, whether it be visual or instrument flying. You can learn more about lookout scans in the video below. That concludes the content for Chapter 11. You should now understand safe ground handling, what to do during a quick reaction alert, to understand safe practices within the circuit, and to understand safe practices on the ground.